Hello everyone. I apologize for delaying putting out a video, not to get into graphic detail, but I was, and am, dealing with a family tragedy that happened very recently. It's a type of tragedy that makes one take serious stock of one's life. I will get back to completing my list of top 10 things I hate about Bible teaching, but I decided I wanted to use some of my seminary training, particularly New Testament Greek, for a new video series. This new video series will focus on the Greek New Testament and offer commentary based upon the Greek text. Obviously, there is a lot of commentary that can go into the series: Greek grammar, textual criticism, translation, interpretation of certain words. So I'll choose what I consider the most relevant parts of the Greek New Testament. My background in New Testament Greek started in seminary, where I took 5 semesters of Greek and also was a Greek tutor for about a year. You know, I'm just one of those eccentric types that like ancient languages. The format of the videos will be the following. First, I will do a dramatic reading, at least as dramatic as I can be, of the New Testament. I do this because I want others to actually hear what the Greek text says. Also, I've noticed on YouTube Bible reading by YouTubers, and I want to offer something different. This reading includes both the Greek text and an English translation with it. Second, I will offer commentary on the text. Right now, my only standard is the Greek part. Anything else is just what interests me. I appreciate your patience on this. Despite my circumstances, God is still good, and I have hope in the Lord Jesus Christ that all things will work out for good. And the Holy Spirit lives in me and empowers me to live a godly life. Let us begin the reading. Enjoy. Biblos Genesos Jesu Christu, Wiu David, Wiu Abraham. Abraham egenesentan Isaac, Isaac de egenesentan Jacob, Jacob de egenesentan Iudan Kaitus Adelphus Autu. Iudas de egenesentan Pharez Kaitan Zara ectes Tamar, Pharez de egenesentan Hezrom, Hezrom de egenesentan Aram, Aram de egenesentan Aminadab, Aminadab de egenesentan Nason, Nason de egenesentan Salmon, Salmon de egenesentan Baez ectes Rechab, Baez de egenesentan Yobed ectes Ruth, Yobed de egenesentan Yesai, Yesai de egenesentan David tan Basilea, David de egenesentan Salomona ectes tu Uriu, Salomon de egenesentan Rabaam, Rabaam de egenesentan Abia, Abia de egenesentan Asaph, Asaph de egenesentan Yosaphat, Yosaphat de egenesentan Yoram, Yoram de egenesentan Atzian, Atzias de egenesentan Yoatham, Yoatham de egenesentan Akaz, Akaz de egenesentan Yezekian, Ezekias de egenesentan Manasseh, Manasseh de egenesentan Amos, Amos de egenesentan Iosian, Iosias de egenesentan Yakanian, Kaitus Adolphus Autu, Epites Metoikesias Babylonas, Meta de ten Metoikesian Babylonas, Yakanias egenesentan Salathiel, Salathiel de egenesentan Zerubbabel, Zerubbabel de egenesentan Abiud, Abiud de egenesentan Eliakim, Eliakim de egenesentan Azor, Azor de egenesentan Zadok, Zadok de egenesentan Akim, Akim de egenesentan Eliud, Eliud de egenesentan Eleazar, Eleazar de egenesentan Matan, Matan de egenesentan Jacob, Jacob de egenesentan Yosef tan Andra Marias, ex heis egenethe Jesus, halagamenas Christos. Pasai un hai geneai apa Abraham heos David, geneai decateseres. Kai apa David heos tes metokesias Babylonas, geneai decateseres. Kai apates metakesias Babylonas eos tu Christu, genai decateseres. Tu de Jesus Christu he genesis hutos ein. Nestiu theses tes metras autu Marias to Yosef. Prin he sunelthen autus Eurethe en gastri ek husa ek pneumatas hagiu. Yosef de ha aner autes. Dikaias on kai me thelon autain diegmatisai. Ebilethe lathra apolusai autain. Tauta de autu en thumethentas. Idu, angelos curio kat anar ephane autu legon. Yosef vias David, methabethes para laben Marian tengunai kasu. Tagar en aute genethan ek pneumatas estin hagiu. Texatai de huian, kai kaleses ta anima autu Yesun. Altas gar sos se talan autu apaton harmation auton. Tu ta de halan gaganen hina plerothe ta rethen hupa curio dia tu profetu legantes. Idu, he parthenos en gastri exe, kai texitai huion, kai kalesusin ta anima autu, Emmanuel. Haesten methermenuamenon, methemon hathas. Egerthes de ha Yosef apatu hupno, epoiesen hos rasataxen auto ha angelos curiu. Kai paralaben ten gunaika autu. Kai uk egenosken autain heos hu eteken huian. Kai ekalasen ta anima autu, Yesun. All right, I hope you enjoyed the reading of Matthew chapter 1. As you can see, I have the actual Greek text open, and I hope to show you some interesting things about that text. But before I get started, I will need to give you a brief introduction to the Greek New Testament. Let's get started. The first thing to know is that the Greek New Testament is written in a particular kind of Greek called Koine Greek. Koine is the Greek word for common. Koine Greek was what was spoken by the people during the time of Christ, his apostles, and those after them in the ancient Greco-Roman world. Second, the Greek New Testament was written with ink and papyri. Papyri are leaves that were used to manufacture paper during the Greco-Roman period. Later in history, the Greek New Testament copyists would use parchment or animal skins as writing material. Third, there are over 5,000 manuscripts of the New Testament. These manuscripts range from small fragments of papyri to codices of the whole New Testament, from the late 2nd century AD all the way to the invention of the printing press. Fourth, we do not have the original New Testament books. These books, of course, were destroyed over time. We have copies of those books, which were done by hand by copyists or scribes. Sometimes it was a single scribe. Sometimes a group of scribes would gather in a scriptorium to copy a book or books of the New Testament. Fifth, and this is something I have to be very careful when describing, the copies of the New Testament have errors or differences. However, the vast majority of those errors or differences are essentially mistakes that can be easily spotted. These include things like misspelled words, transposed words, a word written twice, things like that. These errors or differences are easily spotted and do not affect translation or interpretation in any significant way. However, the manuscripts do have variations or different readings in many places that we do need to discern which is the correct reading. This task is called New Testament textual criticism, whose goal is to determine what is the exact wording of the New Testament. I will bring these up when discussing variants in reading. Rest assured, your New Testament is very accurate. like 99.5% accurate, and no variant adds, removes, or affects any Christian doctrine. And yes, I do believe that the entire Bible is inerrant, but that is a discussion for another time. Personally, I believe God, in His perfect will, has given the Church, the Christians, the task of studying, passing down, and preserving the New Testament. So, let's go into the New Testament. Okay, everybody, so welcome to the Greek New Testament. Let's go ahead and go through this New Testament. Let's take a look at some interesting things, and let's see what we can do to ultimately honor God with all of this. So let's begin. Now, the first part here is this is the genealogy of Jesus Christ according to the Gospel of Matthew. I know genealogies aren't the most exciting thing to read, and I know it was kind of dry, but this is, though, important to keep in mind for a couple of things. One, it does show that Jesus is a descendant of David and Abraham. Now, as you know from the Old Testament, God promised Abraham that his children would be as numerous as the stars of the sky, and also with David that the Messiah would come through his line. So, what you're really seeing here is God working in history to make sure his promises are fulfilled. Anyway, let's go through some translation things here, and let's just see what we find out. Now, it's typically, as you know, for about 15 verses, it's things like Abraham begot Isaac, Isaac begot Jacob, and so on and so forth. Now, you're probably wondering why I use the word begot. That's a pretty old-fashioned word, right? We don't really say that today. You don't say, hey, so-and-so begot so-and-so, right? You know, usually we say something else. And you can kind of see this. For example, in the NIV translation, that's the 2011 NIV, I should add. We can see here they say Abraham was the father of Isaac. Isaac was the father of Jacob. Jacob the father of, and so on and so forth. Um, I just used the word begot, sorry, just because it was just a shorter word. It still gets the meaning across. It's actually the word that the New King James Version uses. And I think it's just good to be just concise with your writing too. You don't need to say was the father. I think you say begot, you still get it. Anyway, let's just keep going through this and see if there's anything that's particularly interesting. Let's see here. So here's kind of a little interesting point here is when we get to let's see here, verse 3. And Judas begot Pharez and Zara from Tamar. Now, if you know your Old Testament history, Tamar is an interesting character. Judah, right? They call it Judas here, but it's a genitive, not genitive. It's a nominative form. Judah had a responsibility when one of his brothers died to provide an heir or to provide a son for the brother's dead wife. It was a practice back in the Old Testament times, right? It's like a familial practice to make sure the line didn't die out, right? Judah did not want to have a child with Tamar. So Tamar basically disguised herself as a prostitute, tricked Judah, and she got impregnated by him. So kind of a sexual scandal there. But it's interesting that you have a woman mentioned here. And then you keep going through here. Let's see here. Here we go. And Salmon begot Boaz. They say Boaz here, but it's Boaz from Rahab. Rahab, if you know Old Testament history, she is the prostitute from Jericho who helped two Israelite spies escape and caused the walls of Jericho to fall down. So again, yeah, you have a prostitute here, kind of another sexual scandal. Let's keep going. Let's see here. Boaz begot Jobed from Ruth, another woman here. That's kind of interesting. Well, Ruth here, she is actually a Moabite. She is not an Israelite. We all know Ruth. She is the main character of the book named after her in the Old Testament. She becomes the great-grandmother of King David. Let's keep going on. Jesse gave birth to David. David gave birth to Solomon. Here's something interesting. So here's what the literal translation. Here's what the NIV translates verse 6. So if you go here, all right, so let's see here. Verse 6 says here, and Jesse, the father of King David. David was the father of Solomon, whose mother had been Uriah's wife. Now, the thing is, in this verse, there's actually quite a few words that are missing in this passage. So, for example, literally a verse goes, Jesse begot David the king, and David begot Solomon from she of Uriah. So it doesn't say mother or wife or anything like that. Now, for those of us who are familiar with Old Testament history, we know that Solomon's mother was Bathsheba. And we all know the story of David and Bathsheba. David had Uriah murdered, and so that he could take Bathsheba, and also, well, it's a pretty sad story. I won't go too much. But this is interesting here because in Greek here, it's just one. This is a article that's used to refer to Bathsheba. Now, in Greek, articles can be masculine, feminine, or neuter, right? So again, it's a grammatical gender, but it can refer to natural genders in certain contexts. So here we see here that it's referring to Bathsheba right here because it's a feminine article. Now you're probably wondering why don't they mention the name Bathsheba? Well, probably because they may want to emphasize that Matthew might have wanted to emphasize that she was married to Uriah, who was a non-Israelite, was actually a Hittite. So again, the other thing is it's a major sexual scandal, of course. So it's kind of interesting. Okay, let's keep moving on. So let's see here. Solomon begot Rehoboam, Rehoboam begot Abiah, Abiah begot Asaph, Asaph, and hold on here. Okay, we got a one right here. Now in the Greek New Testament, if you see a number next to a word, it means there's a textual variant of some kind. So let's just underline this word here. And let's go ahead and take a look at the textual apparatus. That's this thing right over here. Hopefully you guys can see this okay. So there is a variant here. So the word in question is Asaph, Asaph, right? Now the variant is Asa, Asa, right over here. So the difference is this Greek letter phi, right? So this Greek letter changes Asa to Asaph. Now, for those of us who know Old Testament history, Asa was a king during the time of Israel, during the monarchy. So it's a different spelling here, and it looks like they gave the people who looked at this gave it a B ranking. So they were pretty sure Asaph was the correct wording, but there is a little bit of doubt. Anyway, does this affect anything? No, not really. It just simply different way of spelling it. Excuse me. Again, it really wasn't that uncommon to have different spellings of the same name, just depending upon the context. So it doesn't affect too much. Let's keep going. Isaac begot Ram begot Atzion begot Yothan. Okay. Nothing too much here. Hezekiah begot Manasseh. Manasseh begot Amos. Amos begot. Oh, hold on here. Okay. So it looks like we have another variation here. So it looks like we got a number 2 here, and we have this we'll underline this word. The word in question here is Amos, or Amos. So Amos, right here, and we got to flip the page real quick. Up here. So it looks like there's a difference of spelling. So it looks like the difference is Amos and Ammon. Now, for those of us who know Old Testament history during the monarchy period, there is a king Ammon. He's actually a particularly wicked king in the Bible, possibly maybe the most wicked king. Although he does have an interesting story in Second Chronicles. Um, so here, the one word has a sigma here, and the other one has a nu, right? So again, it's a difference in spelling the king's name here. Again, does this affect really anything? Not really. I think there's a, you know, it's like I said, there could be multiple ways to spell a name, just depending on context. But let's keep going. Let's see. Let's see here. It looks like, oh, we got another one in verse 11. So, verse 11, let's see here. Josiah begot Jeconiah and his brothers during the carrying away of Babylon, or the Babylonian exile. So let's see here. Looks like the word in question. Let's see here. There's again a sen, so we'll just underline here just to kind of show what's going on. And ouch, sorry about that. Looks like again a sen. Looks like there are manuscripts that stop there, but then it looks like there's another variation which says gave birth to Joachim, and Joachim gave birth. So it looks like it's saying it's not Jeconiah, but it's actually someone named Joachim. It looks like there isn't this. They're giving us an A ranking here, which means they're pretty certain this is the original. Again, a sense. So it's original. It says gave birth to Jeconiah, not Joachim. Again, it looks like the evidence is pretty weak for Joachim. Joachim. So again, that's why I probably gave this an A ranking. Let's keep going. So, let's see if we find anything else that's particularly interesting. And let's keep going. Let's see here. Well, it looks like okay, verse 16 here. There's a couple interesting things I want to point out here. The first thing I want to show is this here, the word haste. This is actually a relative pronoun here. Now, as you know, Greek pronouns are actually masculine, feminine, or neuter. Now, the verse says, and Jacob begot Joseph, the husband of Mary, from whom was born Jesus, the one called Christ, or whom was called Christ. Normally here you would expect actually a masculine pronoun, but here it's a feminine one. And this feminine one, as you know, they refer back to previous words, right? Mary, that's a feminine word, feminine gender here, Marias. So here, which this verse is showing is actually Mary was the one that gave birth to Christ, and not Joseph here. So that's kind of an interesting point. Let's keep going. Aha, we got a number 4 here. It looks like we have a little bit of a variant. Let's just go ahead and let's take a look here. Let's see. Verse 16. So it looks like the question is the husband of Mary. So let's just underline here. So it looks like the husband of Mary, from whom was born Jesus. So from whom, was born Jesus, the one called Christ. Now look like there's another variant here, right over here. And let's see if I can maybe move this up a little bit higher so you can see kind of what's going on here. It looks like here, right over about here. Oh boy, that's a big one. So it says here, the variant is whom was betrothed to the Virgin Mary, begot Jesus, the one called Christ. Okay, oh good, they do provide English translation. I didn't have to do that off the cuff. Okay. So it looks like there is a variation here. Really, the big word in question is the Virgin. Virgin Mary. Looks like they added this word here. Again, if we let me just put this down. We'll wait for the camera to just kind of sort of get back into focus. So it looks like there's a variant here. Looks like the one that doesn't mention virgin here is the one that the textual critics preferred. So, and yeah, it looks like there's some pretty good evidence for this one too. Okay, well, let's keep going. So, hey, we made it through the genealogy, folks. Now we get to the really good stuff. Okay, so let's just make sure my camera can get back into focus here at some point. So now we are going to go into the birth of Jesus Christ. So let's go ahead and take a look at this and see what kind of interesting things we can find in here. Um, all right, so let's go on ahead. So it says here, now this is the birth. Thus was the birth of Jesus Christ. Looks like we already have a variant here. Let's just see what's the word and questions are. So let's jump down here. Christ or Jesus Christ. Okay. Let's underline these words here just to kind of show Jesus Christ. Okay. And it looks like it's either could be Jesus Christ. It could be Christ Jesus is another variant, or just simply Christ. Okay. Now that's. Does this affect anything? In all honesty, no. Why there's three different variants? Maybe a scribe was looking at maybe maybe two or three copies of Matthew, saw one that said Jesus Christ, one that said Christ Jesus, and another said Christ, and then thought, well, I need to go ahead and put all these together. So maybe he just wanted to just put them all in. Yeah, again, does this affect anything? Absolutely not. Just interesting though. Oh my gosh, we got another variant here. Looks like with this word, genesis, right? Genesis, that's the Greek word for birth. So let's see what the variant is over here. So let's just go ahead and underline this word up here. And let's see, Genesis, right? And it looks like the other variation here is the word genesis. Seems like it's a pretty minor one. Actually, both of these words mean birth. I'm not sure if there's any kind of if there's any differences between the two. Um, Again, they give us the B ranking, so they're not. So that means they're certain, but there's just a little bit of doubt. Nothing major. Again, doesn't really affect anything too much. But let's keep going and let's see what else our Greek text has to say. Joseph, I'm going to just read this to myself. Don't fear Mary, your woman. Jesus. Okay, here's kind of an interesting little point here. All right, so verse 21 here. And let's see here, hopefully. And she will give birth to a son, and you will call his name Jesus, for he he will save his people from their sins. Okay, now this word here I want to underline autos. Now autos is a pronoun. It can mean it's a masculine one here in this case, which can mean he, right? Sometimes in Greek you don't really need to have a pronoun when talking, because this word here, so say, literally means he saves. So you might be saying like, for he will save. Now sometimes these pronouns could be used just as just identifying the subject. Now if you notice when I translated, I said he himself, right? So I kind of take this more as an emphasizer or kind of an intensifier. So here, I think it's emphasizing that Jesus will be the one to save his people from their sins. Kind of interesting. Again, just some stuff you wouldn't really be able to see in an English translation. Let's keep going. And let's see here. This and this was fulfilled. Let's see the word from the Lord through the prophets saying. Okay, so another point to keep in mind here is when you get to any bold print in a Greek New Testament text, it usually is referring to it. Not usually, it is referring to an Old Testament quotation. So here is where the Old Testament being quoted. So here it is: "Behold, the virgin uh, will conceive and will give birth to a son, and they will call his name Emmanuel," which is translated or interpreted God with us. Now, Old Testament prophecy and how it's fulfilled in the New Testament, in some cases, it's a really simple one-to-one, but sometimes it gets a little bit complicated, and here is a case of that. This prophecy is saying that the virgin will conceive and bear a son, and they will call his name Emmanuel. Well, this is referring to Jesus. Jesus is not called Emmanuel. He's given the name Jesus by the angel. So why is this prophecy wrong? Was the angel mistaken in giving the name Jesus? Now, I have not looked in this extensively. My off-the-cuff answer is this prophecy is really, this Emmanuel here, and this prophecy is really referring more to Jesus's character and not like the name. So Emmanuel is a reference to his character, right? Not his literal name, which is God with us. And I would say here it's implied that Jesus is God. He is full deity, right? Anyway, that's what I think. Let's keep going. Let's see. Joseph rose from the dream. He did as the angel commanded him. Angel Lord commanded, and he gave birth to, and did not know her until she gave birth to a son, and he called his name, and called his name Jesus, and she called his name Jesus. Okay. Here's something interesting. Looks like we actually do have another variant here in verse here, seventh one. Looks like the word in question is the word huion. So one variant says son. And it looks like if we just go over here, it looks like there's another one. And hopefully I can raise this up so you can see a little better. Looks like it says here, tan huion otes tan, sorry, I'm going to butcher this. Prototokon, which means firstborn. So the son, or her son, her firstborn son, right? So the question is the reading just say son or her firstborn son? It looks like here the textual critics gave it an A. So just son, that's the preferred one. And then it looks like her firstborn son, and this, so it's the difference between those two. Wow, look, the manuscript evidence is actually pretty interesting. We won't get into that now, but let's just say there's a variation here. Does it really affect anything? Really, no. As far as like, I think it's implied in the text that Jesus is Mary's firstborn son. So, again, nothing major here, but it is interesting, and and as a textual critic, we should try to get as close to the original writing as we can. So, okay, guys, I really thank you for taking this time out to look into this. Again, thank you for watching this. Thank you for paying attention. And yeah, I hope to make another video. Hopefully, it's coming week or in the next couple weeks. So we shall see how that goes. But anyway, thank you all for listening. And until next time, stay theological.